The International Court of Justice has made preliminary rulings on South Africa's additional measures in the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The court ruled that Israel is to halt its military offensive in Rafah and open up its borders for aid to be allowed through. Additionally, the court ordered Israel to submit a report of the implementation of these orders in a month. Now, joining me now to speak on these developments is international relations expert, Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, who joins me on the line. Good morning, Doctor, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Ms. Joe.
Now, firstly, this is said to be a groundbreaking ruling by the court, especially bearing in mind that legally the court could not use the term ceasefire. Why is that?
Well, the court has made, the ruling by the court, really it's threefold. And if you look at the ruling, it's a life-saving ruling. One, to order the cessation of the assault on Rafah with immediate effect. It also ordered the opening of the Rafah crossing, which has been a lifeline for a lot of Palestinians. And second, and the third one, of course, to order Israel to provide and allow access to humanitarian aid, which is desperately needed. So those are basically life savings order that the court came up with. And it's a recognition that the situation is in dire needs. And the court based its ruling on a numerous report of UN agencies, including the Secretary General of the United Nations.
During the reading, Nawaf Salam, the president of the ICJ, said provisional measures ordered by the court in March did not fully address the situation in Palestine. And furthermore, that had been met for a new emergency order. Is this the ICJ admitting that it failed?
The ICJ, actually, he was quite clear to indicate that the ICJ has the responsibility to review the decision should the situation change. And it's a court view that the situation has drastically changed from what it used to be. And that's why the president of the court, Salam, based the ruling on the reports of numerous UN agencies, which are authentic mouthpiece for what is going on in the Gaza Strip, particularly in Rafah. So it's not a failure. It's actually the fact that the court has the responsibility to continue to review the situation. If it deteriorates or if it improves, it has the responsibility to do that.
One of the reasons cited by the ICJ in its ruling was that Israel has not sufficiently addressed and dispelled concerns raised by its military operations that, as we know, has driven more than 800,000 citizens out of Rafah. We know that 1.5 million Palestinians had been sheltering there from the fighting elsewhere in Gaza. What for you stood out in this particular ruling?
It's the finding that 800,000 people since the January ruling have been displaced, and the destruction of the infrastructure is continuing unabated. And I think these are things that really informed the court to review its decision. Israel did come up with the argument that it has informed civilians to start evacuating areas that are going to be subjected to this assault. The court has made a ruling that those measures are not sufficient to address the concerns that were raised in the January ruling. So I think Israel has been really deprived, or let me not say deprived. Israel's argument has been found wanting in terms of this. Hence, you see this response by Israel that the findings of the court is outrageous, morally repugnant, and disgusting. This is how Israel describes this. And I think the next battleground is the Security Council. I wouldn't be surprised that African members, particularly Algeria and the Arab League, are going to start coming up with a resolution to allow the Security Council to come up with enforcement measures. Remember, Ms. Chair, that these findings by the court lacks enforcement measures, and those measures are the prerogative of the Security Council. So it remains to be seen if the United States would again veto any resolution of the Security Council.
Yeah, so, I mean, you mentioned the January ruling. So yesterday's decision marked the third time this year that the ICJ has issued preliminary orders seeking to rein in the death toll and alleviate humanitarian suffering in Gaza. So legally binding as they are, what use are these orders if the court can't enforce them? And should Israel fail to uphold this ruling, what happens next?
Well, you know, Israel has unfortunately a reputation of disregarding Security Council resolution and defying international law. And I think there's concern that Israel will be categorized as a pariah state if it continues to behave in this manner. The US administration is quite concerned about the fact that Israel is losing the diplomatic space. You would know, Maschaba, that the US has been trying to come up with a rapprochement between Israel and Saudi Arabia, and that is based fundamentally on the recognition of the Palestinian state. There are other countries that are starting to recognize the state of Palestine. We've seen the three countries during the course of this week, Spain, Norway, and Ireland recognizing this. So the momentum is definitely shifting. So you may see more countries that are starting to recognize the state of Palestine. Currently, there are about 142 countries out of 193 members of the United Nations that recognizes the state of Palestine, including South Africa.
What is the way forward, though? I mean, with Israel having come out to blatantly say that they will ignore the order, now what?
Israel may remain very much isolated, and I'm afraid if the United States is to pull the rug under Israel's feet, is the only country that is really standing up to support Israel. You would have seen moves in Congress, actually, to try to invite Netanyahu to come and address Congress. These are Republican members. But the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, also came out to say he would urge both members of the House to come up with measures to sanction the ICJ. It would be really unfortunate if you don't agree with the court to sanction them. And this extraterritoriality behavior of the United States has really cost it a lot of reputation. There are challenges currently within the United States because they're going through elections. People are really turning against the United States. Students have been demonstrating. But globally, there's a movement that says this can't happen in our lifetime. And I think there's a pressure that will be put across governments, particularly Western government. They've already started to fragment. Yesterday, we've seen Germany saying that they would enforce the warrant of arrest should it come out. France has already come out. So there's a fragmentation within the G7. It doesn't augur well for international stability if you see there's a lot of fragmentation. It would have been better to see unified position across all issues, even in this one, if they've taken a unified position that Israel should comply.
Yeah, well, some people who didn't agree with the court are within the court itself. It's reported that 13 of the 15 judges agreed to call on Israel to halt its assault. Are we then privy to the position of the other two judges that were in disagreement? Because it would really just be interesting to know why any judge, and in this case, thankfully only two, wouldn't agree with South Africa on this matter.
Actually, it has been a consistent pattern, Maschaba. The two judges is Judge Barak, who's sent there by Israel, and the Ugandan judge, who has always ruled against the rest of the decision. She was the lone one during the January. She was herself and Judge Barak were the two during the January ruling. So the pattern is the same. Most of the judges have been firm about this. So. And the Ugandan judge, she's come under sometimes very unfair criticism by the media. I think she exercises her role and responsibility as a judge, and that should be respected. But in this case, the majority of judges have made a decision, a very large majority for that matter.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
It's my pleasure, Maschaba. Thank you.
That was international relations expert Dr. Kingsley Makhubela.